What if one night in a rundown hotel, a young woman vanished and the only clue left behind was a bizarre, silent elevator video that would go on to haunt millions? What if her disappearance became a mirror, reflecting not just a mystery, but the deep anxieties, obsessions, and darkness hidden within us all? And what if this wasn't fiction, but a true story, one that still has no definitive ending, and no one can quite explain? There are certain stories that don't just disturb us, they stay with us. They follow us like shadows, whispering questions in the quiet moments. The story of Elisa Lam is one such tale. Not because it's the most gruesome, not because it involves famous figures or dramatic court trials, but because it feels eerily real, heartbreakingly intimate, and yet fundamentally unexplainable. It unfolds like a dream you can't quite wake from, one that starts with the ordinary, descends into the unsettling, and ends. It begins not with a scream, but with silence. Elisa Lam was a 21-year-old student from Vancouver, Canada, bright, thoughtful, introspective. She kept a blog where she poured her heart out, revealing both her passion for literature and her private struggles with bipolar disorder. Her words were raw, poetic, and often painfully honest. In them, we saw a young woman searching not for fame or attention, but for clarity, for peace, for meaning in a world that often offers very little of it. In January 2013, Elisa set off on a solo journey through California. She wanted to see new places, to breathe new air, to feel herself in motion again. For many, travel is an escape. For Elisa, it was also a form of healing. But just days into her stay at a hotel in downtown Los Angeles, all contact with her ceased. No calls, no emails, no social media posts. It was as though she had evaporated into thin air. At first, few outside her family and close friends noticed. But then the police released the last known footage of her, a surveillance video from the hotel's elevator. What the world saw in those 4 minutes ignited a firestorm of speculation, fear, and obsession. In the video, Elisa moves strangely, pressing buttons without reason, peering into the hallway as if expecting someone, stepping in and out, making odd gestures with her hands. Her expressions shift from nervous to playful to terrified. And then that video, more than any police report or autopsy, is what captured the world's imagination. It became a symbol of everything we fear. The idea of being watched, being followed, being consumed by something we can't understand. And from that single video, thousands of theories bloomed. Was she being stalked? Was she suffering a mental health crisis? Was there something paranormal involved? Everyone had an opinion. No one had an answer. What makes Elisa's story so unsettling is not just the mystery surrounding her death. It's the collision between the digital age and the human soul. It's the way millions of strangers dissected her life, her words, her last moments, trying to decode a tragedy through pixels and guesses. And in doing so, perhaps revealed more about themselves than about Elisa. As we dive deeper into this story, we're not just recounting facts. We're exploring a moment in time that blurred the line between reality and nightmare. We're examining how society responds to mystery, how it feeds on silence, and how quickly a person's pain can become a spectacle. This is a story about Elisa Lam, but it's also a story about all of us. Now, let's begin at the beginning, before the rooftop, before the elevator, before the theories. Let's meet Elisa, not as a symbol, but as a person, and follow her through the corridors of the Cecil Hotel into the shadowy corners of one of the most haunting mysteries of our time. The mystery of Elisa Lam, a true story that still haunts the world. Do you believe that a single video, just 4 minutes long, could awaken an entire generation's fascination with the unknown? That a few minutes of grainy footage from a hotel elevator could transform ordinary people into internet sleuths, psychologists, conspiracy theorists, and even believers in the supernatural? This is the story of Elisa Lam, but it is also a mirror, reflecting the fears we hide, the questions we avoid, and the deep unease of a world where truth and mystery are often impossible to separate. Elisa was not a celebrity. She wasn't famous. She was, in many ways, unremarkable, a 21-year-old Chinese-Canadian college student who loved books, travel, and writing. She maintained a Tumblr blog where she wrote about her thoughts, her fears, and her dreams. She often discussed her ongoing battle with bipolar disorder, a condition she never tried to hide. Elisa was open in ways most people are not. She laid bare her mental struggles for the world to see, not to gain attention, but to survive. She wanted deeply to connect with the world. Her posts were poetic, thoughtful, sometimes rambling, sometimes confessional. She was a modern young woman trying to make sense of a world that often felt too fast, too cold, too fragmented. In January 2013, Elisa set off on a solo journey to the United States, with plans to visit Southern California. She hoped it would be a form of healing, a way to clear her mind, breathe, and recenter herself. The city of Los Angeles, with its culture, history, and arts, seemed like the perfect place to disappear into something new. She arrived at the Cecil Hotel on January 26th, and from there, the mystery began. To understand Elisa's story, you have to understand the Cecil Hotel. It is no ordinary place. Built in the 1920s, the hotel once embodied luxury. But over the decades, it decayed into something else entirely. Located in downtown LA, near the troubled area known as Skid Row, the hotel became known not for its charm, but for its association with crime, tragedy, and death. It was the temporary home of serial killer Richard Ramirez. The Night Stalker. It witnessed suicides, overdoses, unexplained disappearances. The walls of the hotel had absorbed darkness over nearly a century. It was the kind of place where the air itself felt heavy, where stories seemed to cling to the shadows. Elisa did not know any of this. In the days following her check-in, she visited bookstores, coffee shops, and museums. She posted photos online. But on January 31st, everything went silent. No phone calls, no blog updates, no check-ins. Her family, deeply worried, contacted the LAPD. A search began, first within the hotel and then spreading wider into Los Angeles. But it wasn't until investigators reviewed security camera footage from the hotel that things took a strange and chilling turn. The video would become one of the most analyzed, debated, and re-uploaded clips in the history of the internet. In the elevator video, Elisa is seen stepping inside around midnight. She presses multiple floor buttons. The door refuses to close. She peeks out into the hallway as if someone is following her. She steps in and out. She hides in a corner. She makes strange hand gestures, almost as if she's communicating with someone or something invisible. Then she disappears from view. The elevator door opens and closes again and again with no one there. Millions of people watched and speculated. Was she high? Having a mental breakdown? Was she being chased by someone who never entered the frame? Or was there something supernatural at play? Some viewers noticed her hand movements resembled signs from classical spiritual rituals. Others compared her posture to horror films. A few said her face looked not scared, but resigned, like she knew she was already lost. Despite the widespread attention, police found no clues to her whereabouts. Until the complaints started. Guests at the Cecil began reporting that the water tasted strange, that it had a bad smell, that it was discolored. Maintenance workers went to check the rooftop water tanks. What they found was beyond disturbing. Eliza's body was floating in one of the tanks. Naked, partially decomposed, curled in the cold, dark water. No signs of struggle. No bruising. No sexual assault. The tanks were sealed, requiring a ladder and strength to access. The roof was locked and alarmed. How did she get there? How did no one see her? And most hauntingly of all, why? An autopsy concluded that her death was an accidental drowning, possibly linked to her bipolar disorder. But the explanation only seemed to deepen the mystery. If she was experiencing a psychological episode, how did she navigate the roof without help? Why did the door alarms not go off? Why were her clothes missing? Online communities erupted with theories. Some said Elisa was murdered by someone at the hotel who used their knowledge of its layout to cover it up. Others said she was possessed, or that she was a victim of the hotel's dark energy, an energy built up from decades of suffering. More rational voices pointed to psychosis, suggesting Elisa might have believed someone was after her. In her confusion, perhaps she fled to the roof. Perhaps she thought the water tank was a place to hide. But even this doesn't explain how she physically managed to get inside. Then there were the strange coincidences. Elisa's death eerily mirrored scenes from a 2005 horror film titled Dark Water, in which a girl's body is found in a rooftop tank after guests notice their water turning black. There was also the tuberculosis outbreak in Skid Row shortly after Elisa's death. The test used to screen for TB. It was called the Lam-Elisa test, an acronym that, by a bizarre twist of fate, matched her name exactly. To many, this wasn't just a tragedy. It was a sign, a cipher, a story that felt scripted by forces beyond comprehension. The case received renewed attention when Netflix released a documentary series about it in 2021. New voices entered the conversation. Psychologists, law enforcement, spiritualists, former hotel guests. Everyone had a piece of the puzzle, but no one could put it together. At its core, the mystery of Elisa Lam remains powerful, not because of gore, or horror, or spectacle, but because it feels deeply human. A young woman, vulnerable and lost, in a city too vast to care, in a building too old to protect her. The tragedy lies in how ordinary she was. and how extraordinary her disappearance became. Today, the elevator video still circulates. Her blog is still online. People still ask, was it mental illness murder? A spiritual crossing? Or was it all of those things tangled together in one moment that can never be understood? This story lingers because it doesn't give us answers. It gives us questions. It forces us to look inward at how we treat mental health, how we chase sensationalism, how we turn pain into entertainment, and perhaps how thin the line really is between our world and another. What do you think happened to Elisa Lam? The question remains open, and maybe it always will.